what do you think what has gone right in your career?
Multiple things. You have to be lucky to get the right exposure at the right time, meet the right kind of people at the right time. And these things you cannot actually plan for. You can just try to maximize your success by making as much exposure as possible and then hope that some of these will be good ones. Our times, the philosophy, or at least my philosophy, was that the first part of my career should be all learning. First 10, 12 years, I would like to learn as much as possible. That attitude came into that कि घुसेंगे तो समझ जाएंगे. It's just a question of taking the dive rather than getting afraid कि अभी पानी में जाएंगे तो डूब जाएंगे. वैसा नहीं है. पानी में जाएंगे तो खुद ही सीख जाएंगे. If you have a strong common sense, it can make up for many other things. But वही होता है कि we tend to make things complicated, concepts complicated, whereas my attempt has always been making complex ideas in a very simple terms. My father, he was himself not very literate. He, at the age of 11, he ran away from his home. And in the process, the only word I can think of, he became a very wise person. My parents were not very rich, but I never felt poor.
What your daughter says about you?
Good question. I'd like to ask her myself.
Hi, I'm Surbhi Sarna, and welcome to Mind Over Minerals, a podcast by Inocule. In this podcast, we deep dive into the world of startups and innovation and understand the mindset and the mastery that builds great businesses. In this podcast, our founder Gyan had a conversation with Viraj Naidu. Viraj has spent several decades in the corporate world in cross functional roles, working with companies like Tata Steel, DISA, and Caparo. And currently, he is helping small companies and medium companies to grow sustainably and to scale with intent and purpose. So, let's find out what we have to learn from Viraj.
So you grew up in Kolkata, then went to IIT Kharagpur, then went to Tata Steel, and then you led Disa India as MD. For this journey, you had a very successful career. Have you ever thought कि you will have a podcast with Mind Over Minerals?
अभी तक तो कपिल शर्मा के स्टाइल में नहीं आए हैं. But this is the first podcast I'm participating in. So नई चीज है लेकिन मजा आ रहा है.
What I know about you, Bid, you have been a MD since you are 38, which is very, very early age. So there are many viewers, though, who are very aspiring and they want to make a career and want to be in that seat at a very early age. So what do you think? What has gone right in your career?
Multiple things. I mean, yes, you have to be lucky to get the right exposure at the right time, meet the right kind of people at the right time. And these things you cannot actually plan for. You can just try to maximize your success by making as much exposure as possible and then hope that some of these will be good ones. Let's say at a very young age, okay, getting through IIT itself was a matter of luck also because there are 200,000 people who were appearing for the exam for 2,000 seats in those days. 1% success rate. So it does not mean that the guys who did not qualify are actually not as intelligent. It's just that on that particular day, that they might have missed one mark. So you got lucky there. Right? So that's one thing. Then next, from IIT, when I came to Tata Steel, suddenly being put into a company where it was in the middle of the mine, not that many resources of the head office of Jamshedpur of Tata Steel. We were in the middle of the mine, very few team members, and doing an expansion. So at a young age, if you're thrown into the water, sort of, and you have to learn swimming. You have read the hydraulics, you have read the pneumatics, etc., but you've never even touched it. These things. So when you're thrown in such things, these are all opportunities which only luck can bring you. Then when I got into Timken, for example, uh, at I was just 27 years old at that time. I think when I was sent abroad for training. No, not even 27. I was 24 or 25, I think. So when I was sent abroad for training. So in those days, going abroad used to be a big thing. Nowadays, everybody goes there because after the IT boom, etc. But I'm talking the 94, 95. So going abroad, but not just going abroad. There were 8 of us from 8 different nationalities. दो जर्मन थे, दो फ्रेंच थे, एक ब्रिटिश था, एक जापानीज था, and sudden one Italian guy. And वो 8 आदमी के 8 very young guys फ्रांस जैसी खूबसूरत जगह में, वी वर इन अल्सास रीजन व्हिच इज वेरी ब्यूटीफुल एटसेट्रा, वहां पर बैठ के बेरिंग टेक्नोलॉजी सीख रहे थे। दिन भर तो हम लोग काम करते थे, बेरिंग सीखते थे, बट शाम को देन यू लर्न अबाउट कल्चर्स एंड देन वी लर्न अबाउट कम्युनिकेशन that in my times, I remember when I joined the industry for the first time in Tata Steel and then on Timken also, speaking to a foreigner, I have seen Indians hesitate, which I see even till date, that we treat foreigners like they know something more. But that entire perception or the background goes away when you're living with them for at a very young age, 6 months, and then you're learning that you have something special. They also have something special, but there's nothing extra in either of us. So these were the kinds of opportunities which I got very early in my life, and I'll put that to luck because this was not planned, that you get into IIT, you get into Tata Steel, not in Tata Steel Jamshedpur, which has more resources, you put in the jungle, and then suddenly at a young age you're thrown out with 8 different nationalities, and you learn about the value of communication. कि एक सेम सेंटेंस इंग्लिश में बोला गया, उसका 8 different मीनिंग आ सकता है because of different backgrounds and cultures, the way people react to it. So I would say by the age of 38, these previous learnings had helped me.
तो मैं अगर बोलूं कि आप, एक तो लक आपने बताया, सेकंड इज द एक्सपीरियंस इन टर्म्स ऑफ फर्स्ट फील्ड, देन सेल्स, देन और भी कुछ है एक्सपीरियंसेस जिस जो विच हेल्प यू टू मेक गो टू दैट सीट?
The first part I told you about the opportunities which land up on your plate. But the second thing is that you have to grab those, because maybe similar opportunities landed with many of my colleagues in college and in later jobs also. But you have to grab at those and try to make a learning of it. In I, I mean, in today's generation, I sound like an old man now, but today's generation wants very instant returns. Whereas our times, the philosophy, or at least my philosophy, was that the first part of my career should be all learning. That at least first 10, 12 years, I would like to learn as much as possible. And it's only later in the life that you actually encash that knowledge, which is what happens typically. For example, in Temkin, when I was doing very well, uh, we got some major new accounts, etc., success, etc. But then at the peak of that success, I wanted to leave because I did not want to die just as a bearing specialist. I wanted to know about the entire car rather than just the bearing part of it. So I joined the next company, which was a French company, into a program management role, which goes through the entire cycle of development of a product which goes inside a car. And that gave me so much of insights into real manufacturing processes, the design part, the commercial part, costing part, and then the manufacturing part of the process. So uh, it's one thing to get the opportunity, but the other thing is to grab those opportunities. When you're doing very well, that's the time that you need to make a change because you can get into a comfortable situation. If I had not left Timken at that time, I would not have learned more about this car value chain, this entire supply chain.
So change and also diversify, is that the also change a different field, is that the
Absolutely, because uh, if anybody, because different people have different personalities, and depending on the personalities, you may like to be a specialist or you may like to be a journalist, and different kinds of roles. But I realized this part of my personality that I would like to rather focus onto a big picture rather than just the small picture. I'm not saying right or wrong here. It's just that your question of being comfortable at a particular level of visibility. कि कुछ लोग बहुत ज़्यादा डिटेल में काम करने में भी they're very good and they must use that skill on that. I was good in that part, but I wanted to see कि ये जो छोटी सी चीज है इसका बड़ी चीज में क्या impact होगा. कि that big picture view is very important. So I need to know the related bits, like what actually makes this small thing work. So unless you know the big picture, so that doesn't work. And that desire to know the big picture helped me grow into my career also. क्योंकि जब senior roles में यही होता है कि you need to know the details of it, but at the same time the big picture is far more important. Because the detailing के लिए you have guys who know far more than what you can ever know, because they have gone into that detail. But somebody needs to have the big picture and then work on it.
So in retrospect, if I see what you are saying is, what I think the viewers will appreciate more now that you have lived that life, and अभी पीछे से आप देखते हैं कि पास्ट की तरफ क्या क्या अच्छा हुआ है, which might have landed me in the here. So that is what is. So आपने ये बहुत ही important बात बोली कि big picture thing, then risk taking, and then also what are the opportunity that is coming to you and grabbing it.
Correct.
And anything else you want to add in this?
I'll just continue on that line only. That when I joined this company,
Communication. Also, you have added communication.
that's it. So when I joined this company on this car seat manufacturing in a program management role, so since it was a role which touched all functions of the company, because you're working on prototype development, you're working with designers to draw some things, you're working with suppliers to develop something, that whether it will be sheet metal or tubes, or how you will bend it or weld it, etc. So it gave a wide exposure to all functions of it. You're working with purchase guys, store guys, IT guys. So that company then went for an ERP implementation. And it was a fourth shift ERP, which I still remember. It's redundant, not used anymore. But I was made the project leader for that, because I had the exposure to each function, and that further accelerated my learning into that. Because while doing the ERP implementation, one big thing kept coming up: the costing part of it, costing that we have to capture all the costs at different stages of the WIP, etc. And I was not a finance guy; I was a mechanical engineering guy. But I had a great teacher. Teacher in the sense, I had a colleague. He was a French guy, about my age at that time, Jean-Pierre Fenêtre, and he explained the whole costing logic to me. That this is how the product costing is done. And with my mathematical intent, I could see that it's pure logic. Anybody can understand that. And then I realized that, okay, I can use this information for many other things. It added on to my general, the big picture view, that I could link up with the finance part of it, a problem, far easier, simply because I could appreciate the costing side of it. That this is how the costs get built up in a company, this is how the costs get reported. So all these learnings, that communication, opportunities, grabbing it, finance angle, the big picture view. I think these all somehow coordinated, that by the age of 32, when I became a general manager, etc. So I started having that kind of confidence कि कुछ भी करेंगे, किसी भी चीज में घुसेंगे तो कुछ तो कर लेंगे, कि इवन थिंग्स विच वी डोंट नो। फॉर जब कपारों का मैं प्लांट लगा रहा था ग्रीन फील्ड, तो हम लोग की एक छोटी सी टीम थी, 6 लड़कों की पहले टीम थी। उसमें से जो परचेज का लड़का था, ही इज़ द एमडी ऑफ अनदर कंपनी नाउ। सो वो आके बोला, सर इसमें एक प्लेटिंग लाइन लेनी है, हमें पता ही नहीं है प्लेटिंग में होता क्या है। तो माय आंसर एट दैट टाइम वाज़, मुझे भी कहाँ पता है। चलो सप्लायर्स को बुलाते हैं, उनसे सीखते हैं। सो यू कॉल 2 सप्लायर्स, दे विल टेल यू 10 थिंग्स कि मेरे में ये अच्छा है, मेरे में ये अच्छा है, एंड दे विल इनडायरेक्टली टेल यू अबाउट द कॉम्पिटिशन। ओके, दूसरे वाले में आपको ये नहीं मिलता है। सो व्हेन यू मेट द सेकंड कॉम्पिटिटर, you put the same thing in a reverse, कि आप में ये है, आप में ये है, and then you become the expert slowly. Not the expert, but at least the key things that you need to learn about it. So that attitude came into that, कि घुसेंगे तो समझ जाएंगे. It's just a question of taking the dive rather than getting afraid कि अभी पानी में जाएंगे तो डूब जाएंगे. वैसा नहीं है, पानी में जाएंगे तो खुद ही सीख जाएंगे. So all these things added on to becoming an MD by the age of 38, etc., which frankly I don't think was young enough, because those were the times. I mean, I became the MD at 2007. I think the average age of MDs had started sliding much before that.
Disa India is basically they manufacture machines for foundry industry.
That's right.
So that's a deep take,
Absolutely.
So for deep take, I think
It was not common.
No.
Yeah. In manufacturing setups, it was not common. In manufacturing setups, it was typically after 45.
And that's MNC also. It's a Danish company. So from that point of view, it is it's a very rare feat at that time. If you see, yeah, you're saying something.
That's right. Yes, you're right. Though it was not young compared to IT companies, but in manufacturing industry, it was not very common. Manufacturing industry still was aiming for 45 plus minimum experience, where the thinking was that by that till you know every function, or at least have some idea about the different functions and start building your own big picture, you will become that old anyway, which somehow got accelerated because of my situation. I got the exposures, I grabbed those opportunities, and then somehow this big picture started building up in my case.
And you haven't done MBA also.
Yes, I never did MBA. Actually, the plan was that कि IIT के बाद में 2-3 साल काम करेंगे, पैसा कमाएंगे, फिर MBA करेंगे. लेकिन somehow उसके बाद में जो फंसे, फंसे तो नहीं, मतलब जो भी काम में घुसे, उसके बाद में कभी जरूरत नहीं पड़ी. I'm not saying कि MBA is not useful, MBA, because I have deep respect for many of my MBA colleagues. But at the same time, if you have a strong common sense, it can make up for many other things. But वही होता है कि we tend to make things complicated, concepts complicated, whereas my attempt has always been कि and this is something my colleagues have also said, कि Viraj has a thing about making complex ideas in a very simple terms.
That's a big leadership skill. Everywhere I haven't seen a successful leader who doesn't make complex things simple.
That's an essential thing. If you in DSA we used to say something that if you cannot write in words or in picture your company's strategy in less than one page, then you don't have the right strategy.
So I think all this together makes you a jack of all, at the same time master of all also, in a kind of thing, and which probably is required to create that broader and bird's eye view of the whole business, which will take professionals to that higher position. What do you think? Is that so?
Hmm. Jack of all, I agree. Master of all is difficult. It's impossible, actually. You cannot become master of all, right? But only thing that you can master after becoming jack of all is, and which is essential, is people skills. Because you can have all these exposures, all these communication, etc. But if you're not able to deal with people, uh, that falls flat in a senior role. That the ability to connect with individuals on a one-to-one basis.
You have been an MD and then went to a global role, and then now teaching to school students in UK. So that's what I you have in your whole life. You have seen आपने बहुत सारी चीजें try किया, different experiences. This is a new kind of experiences, and nobody will imagine कि ये होता है. इसलिए I want this to, at least if you can share the story.
Two things actually. Why I tried teaching last year also. First thing that in my till my class 8, I was a bad student. One teacher changed me, and that teacher I wanted to become like him. That I would one day like to teach and become like him. Strangely, that same teacher in my whole class, the rest of my class was not that influenced, but something connected with that teacher, and I was strongly influenced. And I felt that at some stage, I would like to make that kind of a difference to young people's lives. And that is why when I chose teaching also, which was in between my consulting, I was doing consulting in UK with private equity companies, etc., etc. And then I thought, now that I have some spare time, because the consulting was not full time. So now that I have some spare time, why not do what you always wanted? Because in between from IIT, professional success, etc., somehow the teaching thing took a backseat. So now that you have time, why not do that? And uh, my choice was that I want to teach kids in that teenage period, because that's the period I saw the change transformation in me. Because that's the is by far the most creative phase of a person's life, but at the same time it's the phase where you get influenced very fast. You see one remarkable movie, you see one remarkable teacher, and it changes your life forever, sort of. So that's the time where you can do, because once they come to the college, a part of the personality is already developed. You cannot make that change later on. And I wanted them to be excited about science, physics and maths. I always liked. So that's how I came. So I said I would like to teach kids of that particular teenage from year 7 to year 12, that period, and teach them physics.
Oh, physics. Oh,
Yes.
nice.
So maths was also the option, but then I chose physics. So I was given both the option. Which one do you want? Because in the UK you have shortage of both these teachers. But I chose physics because uh, I always thought that if you don't like physics, it means only one thing, that you had a bad physics teacher, because the subject cannot be boring. And during my times when I grew up in our schools, when physics was taught, we never did experiments. We were just given books, something written on the board, and do some problems and some etc. We still did it well, but the thing is that many of my friends found it boring. Whereas physics, if you do with experiments, is the most exciting thing that a child can ever come across. When you put a piece of, I mean, I remember when I was teaching in my class 8, I think, like class 8 or 7 last year in the UK kids, a class which was notorious for its behavior, that they were the rowdiest bunch in the whole section in that whole class, etc. They became so involved in that experience. When you take a piece of sodium and put it in water, and it starts splashing all over, and the fire happens, and so you're guarded behind a glass separation, so that they suddenly start saying it, that how the subject can be so interesting. Or I took a prism, I showed them a rainbow, and I said, "Ab tum karo." And that guy made it, and he was never interested in the class basically, but he used that prism in a dark room. We made all the curtains down, etc. He created his own rainbow, and he was so thrilled. "Hey guys, I made a rainbow today." I'm pretty sure his next step will be to do something more with that. That can I rotate this, and the rainbow, how the color changes at some angle, the rainbow goes away somewhere. That's the level of curiosity. That's all we want in a teaching period, because a teacher's job is just to get the kid excited about the subject.
Wonderful.
The learning happens by the kid only. So
So
that's how the teaching happened actually.
So we're talking about this childhood, and we're talking about the teenagers. We'd like to know about your childhood and how it was. What did you do? How did you come to IT? And what if you can share?
In childhood, I mean, my father, he was himself not very literate. He, at the age of 11, he ran away from his home, roamed the whole country, and somehow landed up in Calcutta. But in the process, he saw the world as a child roaming alone. And in the process, the only word I can think of, he became a very wise person. That whenever I heard him speak to any of his friends or any new stranger on the street also, his wisdom showed, his experience showed. The lack of education never showed up. That he always had the best lines. That because he had met so many different kinds of people. He had spent times with shires in Lucknow, on Lucknow streets, etc. He had learnt stitching skills, clothes stitching. He had done so many other things in life. So everything, so he knew something about it, and he had great lines that which I still keep using in my life also, I would say. So he from that background, he pushed my mother for taking up her studies after my sister and I were born. My mother was just class 11 born, studied till class 11 till then. She studied, she went on to do her BA, MA, PhD, and she became a professor of literature in a college. And then my sister went on to do the similar things, masters in physiology, PhD, and she was the youngest woman to the Antarctic Islands, etc. In my house, my father kept saying, in spite of me qualifying for IIT, but till the last day he died, he said, "विराज सबसे नालायक है कि घर में सबसे कम पढ़ा है." Because in our family, my mother was PhD, my sister was PhD, I was just a graduate from IIT. But somehow he did not see it. तुम पढ़ाई नहीं किया life. And but that so to tell you that when I was a kid, somehow this feeling of education's worth was taught into my family, not by preaching, by the day-to-day behavior of my parents. For example, I studied in a Hindi school, a Hindi medium school. तो इंग्लिश बोलने नहीं आती थी. But somehow my parents, हम लोग के घर में इंग्लिश का न्यूज़पेपर आता था. तो वो अमृत बाजार पत्रिका अभी तो बंद भी हो गई, वो कलकत्ता में होती थी. इट वाज वेरी नाइस इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज, वेरी नाइस फ्लुएंट लैंग्वेज. सो उसको पढ़ते पढ़ते रीडिंग एंड राइटिंग वाली इंग्लिश तो बहुत अच्छी हो गई, बोलना नहीं आया. So that's the way I grew up. From Hindi medium, when I got into my after class 10, I scored well in exams, etc. By that time, I had become a good student, thanks to that teacher in Charge. So when I sat in the entrance test for St. Xavier's College, which was a renowned college in Calcutta in those days, I qualified. I was the only one to be qualified from my school. And to the extent that St. Xavier's का डीन में से पूछा कि ये कौन सा स्कूल से आए हो, ये अच्छी स्कूल है क्या, because you scored well. ऐसा हाँ स्कूल तो अच्छी है, मैं तो आ गया हूँ उससे. बट इन सेंट जेवियर सडनली आई वाज फोर्स्ड टू टेक इंग्लिश एज अ फर्स्ट लैंग्वेज, विच वाज अ चैलेंज फॉर मी, बिकॉज रीडिंग राइटिंग तो आती थी, लेकिन कभी भी वो जो इंग्लिश लिटरेचर का होता है कि रेटरिक्स एंड प्रोसोडीज एंड जो हिंदी में छंद अलंकार होते हैं वो इंग्लिश में भी होते हैं, वो सब तो कभी पढ़े नहीं थे. सो सडनली यू आर डूइंग एनालिसिस ऑफ अ पीस रिटन बाय मिल्टन, and it has to be that level also. So that kind of things. English बोलना तो सीखे हम लोग आईआईटी में आने के बाद. In fact, आईआईटी का एग्जाम भी, in my whole family, apart from my mother and my sister, there was no graduate before that. Both mother's side or father's side, no graduate before that. So, but somehow in our family, core family, that value had someone. So, जब क्लास 11 12 में जब जेवीएस में आए थे, तो आई सैट इन द आईआईटी एग्जाम बिकॉज बाकी सब भी बैठ रहे हैं, क्योंकि जेवीएस में वो 150 लोग लड़के थे, 150 के सबके सब आईआईटी में बैठते थे, क्योंकि वो स्टाइल था, उस समय का फैशन यही था. एंड हाफ ऑफ देम क्वालिफाइड आल्सो, जेवीएस हैड अ गुड सक्सेस रेट आल्सो. सो आई अपीयर्ड फॉर द एग्जाम, क्वालिफिकेशन भी हो गया, एंड सो देन वी रियलाइज कि समथिंग बिग इज नॉट सो कॉमन. सो यू जॉइन देयर. फिर आईआईटी पहुंच गए, वहां पर जाके रैगिंग हुई, रैगिंग ने इंग्लिश सिखा दिया उसके पर, क्योंकि रैगिंग में आई थॉट आई विल गेट अवे बाय सेइंग इन कि सर मुझे इंग्लिश नहीं आती, हिंदी मीडियम में पढ़े हैं. नहीं चला वो एक्सक्यूज. स्टेज पे खड़ा हो गया, स्टेज क्या, कैंटीन की टेबल पे खड़ा हो जाए, इंग्लिश में स्पीच दो ऑन टॉपिक्स व्हिच यू कैन नॉट एक्सप्लेन हियर. सो उस तरह का. सो दैट्स माय चाइल्डहुड. I come, my parents were not very rich, but I never felt poor. Uh, my father would often take me on his cycle to school. हम लोग बस में स्कूल जाते थे, गाड़ी वाड़ी तो बहुत बाद में आई. टीवी नहीं था घर में. जब आई थिंक जब हम लोग क्लास 7 8 में आए थे, तो उससे पहली बार एक ब्लैक एंड व्हाइट टीवी आया था, डोर वाला, शटर डोर वाला, उस तरह का.
आईटी में कौन सा टीवी?
आईआईटी में तो फिर भी हॉस्टल में टीवी रहता था, वो कॉमन रूम में. बट टू से दैट कि आई ग्रो थ्रू अ लाइफ, जो कि उस समय इंटरनेट वगैरह नहीं था, सो योर एक्सपोजर टू द रेस्ट ऑफ द वर्ल्ड वाज लिमिटेड. योर लाइफ वाज रेस्ट्रिक्टेड टू वेयर यू कैन रीच फिजिकली. So the lifestyle that we saw, we thought this is the very best. I never even got the feeling that we are not rich. We never felt poor. We were not poor, but we were a normal middle class family, etc. So that feeling, that upbringing carried on to my later behavior also, in my career also. When I was talking to my colleagues, etc., no one felt smaller or bigger to me, because I had seen people of everywhere, every kind, basically. And coming from a modest background and with this kind of values attached, incorporated, my parents were very particular about respect for individuals. Like we had a housemaid who used to come for washing vessels. So when I qualified for IIT, मैं सबके पहुंच हो रहा था, I was asked, उनकी भी पहुंच हो, सरस्वती जी का भी पहुंच हो. So that kind of value system, when it gets into that, so that whole feeling of कि वो नीचे है, ये आप ऊपर हो, उस तरह का वो कभी नहीं आए. तो जब टाटा स्टील में भी मैंने जब ज्वाइन किया था, वर्कर्स के साथ में आई कुड कनेक्ट वेरी फ्रीली, कि ऐसा नहीं है कि वो जो कर रहे हैं वो मैंने, कई बार मेरे को बताया गया था कि वो ये ऑफिसर का काम है या वर्कर का काम है. आई डिड नॉट लाइक दैट, कि मेरे को जैसे कुछ ब्रेक डाउन हुआ है, जाके वहाँ पर अटेंड करना है कोई, एंड सम वर्कर इज स्ट्रगलिंग. तो ऐसा नहीं है कि उस समय वर्कर्स, बाद में मेरे को जब वर्कर्स से दोस्ती हो गई, उन लोगों ने मेरे को बताया था, सर वो ऑफिसर तो बहुत आते हैं, लेकिन वो पॉकेट में हाथ डाल के खड़े रहते हैं. लेकिन आप एक पहले आए थे जो कि मेरे साथ में घुस गए, कि मशीन के अंदर में घुस गए, पूरा तेल लगा हुआ है, ग्रीस हाथ में घुसा हुआ है, स्क्रू खोल रहे हैं, वहाँ सब कर रहे हैं.
That is powerful what you said just now.
इफ यू हैव दैट कनेक्शन विद इंडिविजुअल्स, कि आप जो कर रहे हो मैं भी वो करना चाहता हूँ, मैं सीखना चाहता हूँ, कि उसमें कुछ गंदा या नीचे कुछ नहीं है. And if you do that, people start respecting each other. So my respect for the workers and their respect for me, that became a great connection. And I think because of that attitude, I learned faster because they were open to sharing their knowledge with me. They did not see me as an outsider.
बचपन में जो फैमिली में वैल्यूज दिया जाता है वो बाद में जाके काम आता है.
Absolutely, उसका कोई सब्स्टिट्यूट नहीं.
So that is
कि
very
the
important.
family values आपको that defines you as a person later on.
So ये तो चाइल्डहुड हो गया. फिर what about your family now? I know interesting your marriage stories. Would you like to share?
हमारी मैरिज काफी फिल्मी थी कि गीता माय वाइफ आई मीन शी वाज अ कलीग इन चैंपियन and after just 2 months of I won't even call courting but just meeting and having some lunches together outside I proposed to her. She is from a higher Brahmin family etc and apparently that is considered a very high level of hierarchy whatever and she asked me ये नहीं होने वाला है तुम्हारी कास्ट क्या है so I didn't know my caste हम लोग
आपने इतना जल्दी प्रपोज कर दिया?
not quite because when I met her over the 2 months period of going out together, I realized that I can communicate with her very freely. Till then, I was a very serious kind of person. काम से काम करना, ज़्यादा बात नहीं करना, ऑफिस में वो इमेज भी थी. लेकिन with her, I could communicate very freely, and she could also communicate very freely. I liked her attitude, her basic value systems, etc. So I thought जब सारी चीज़ें टिक हो रही हैं, तो छोड़ना नहीं चाहिए. Before she is grabbed by somebody else, I should make my bed.
Hope Geeta will see this podcast and she'll realize
I
इतने सारे
hope
tick
so.
marks.
She will have her own version or interpretation of it. But this is the way. So तो वैसे हुआ. So I proposed to her very quickly, and maybe this is what she liked. कि मैं बहुत स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड था कि जो दिल में आता था बोल देता था कि छिपा के नहीं रखना है. And I think that clicked with her. बट फिर उसके बाद फिल्मी कहानी भी हुई कि मेरा कास्ट क्या था मुझे पता ही नहीं था. सो आई वेंट बैक आस्क्ड माय पेरेंट्स कि मेरी कास्ट क्या है. मेरे फादर ने बहुत प्राउडली कहा हम लोग क्षत्रिय हैं. तो आई वेंट बैक एंड से हम लोग क्षत्रिय हैं. शी सेड नो क्षत्रिय तो उतना ऊपर नहीं होता है, ब्राह्मण ऊपर होता है. बट एनीवे सो टू सम इट अप, yes, she took a very bold call of trusting a guy like me without even seeing my family because her family disowned her at that time. And she took a bold call of coming with me. Thankfully, I turned out to be not a bad guy and we clicked well. But after 5 years, we could reconnect with my in laws. And now everything is fine. All that was required, they needed some time to adjust to this idea. For them, it was a very difficult idea because in their entire history of generations or centuries, वगैरह, they had never had a marriage outside their caste. So for them, it was not an easy decision. But once they saw after 4 5 years of the marriage, when they got the news कि लड़का बुरा नहीं है and they're going along very, very well and it's a good life they're living. So what's wrong in that? And so when people have some strong beliefs, sometimes even though it may be questionable, you need to give them time to come around it. They will take some time to accept that idea, even if they might think ये तो सही है, लेकिन they cannot do it immediately.
So throughout the life, you have a lot of adventures, adventures, which is not very common in that way. That's what I'm saying. Right? You see, in like we were speaking before this podcast started. So you were singing drama. In drama, also you were very good. And then this marriage, it is a big risk. Risk in a sense, yes, it's not common. We always try to accommodate कर लेते हैं, but that also you both took that step. And then different at every juncture of your career, you always thought कि ये बहुत अच्छा चल रहा है, now let me shift my gear and come to a different area. So this has been, full of adventures, and that's why there are a lot of learnings too.
If I can just take one cue here, you just mentioned that my life seems to be quite adventurous, which is not so common. I don't believe that. Every individual's life is adventurous. It's the way you look at the incidents. With every individual has so many stories to tell. It's just that we don't give value to those stories. right? When I went for the DISA interview, the first interview was done by the current MD, and then I went for a final interview in Denmark. And the CEO of the group, I was told जो manpower, the headhunter था, he had given me the Danish are very close people. They don't get personal. They're very factual, straightforward. So, and also that you have to make a personal presentation. Slides बनाने पड़ेंगे. 6-7 slides का you have to tell about your story, etc. So, though he had said don't get personal, my first slide was the picture of my parents. And I told the same thing. This was my father, this is my mother, and they like that openness. I think the Danish people, it's not that they are not personal. Everybody is personal. They don't show it. But the Danish people, they like the openness because it's a very that society is a very evolved society. The Scandinavian people, etc. They believe in truth, that there's no need to hide things, even if it is not beautiful, sort of. Right. And here for me, there was no question of hiding because I thought there was not, it's not a question of not being beautiful. This is what I am. This defines me. So adventure is there in everybody's life. It's just a question that sometimes we hide things thinking this may not be perceived very well. But if you talk openly about it, everybody's life is full of the stories.
Yeah, absolutely,
And
absolutely.
you are the hero or the heroine of your story. So you don't feel shy of sharing your stories.
Nice, wonderful. So, coming to your 30 plus years of professional experience, there'll be many ups and downs. So, I just want to know what are your three things. One is what are the defining moments which you think that has helped me or as a to groom yourself as a professional, and emotional ups and downs. If you can share, it would be great.
I lost my mother when I was just 23, and I was very close to my mother. And she died of a very suddenly discovered cancer, which in those days had no cure. Nowadays, I understand it can still be cured, right? So at that age, it almost felt like अब तो life खत्म हो गई, इसके बाद करना क्या, etc. But then it heals. It takes some time, but it heals. And then you realize that even till date, I mean, for me, my mom and dad, that it's a great memory for that they had a great life, short or long doesn't matter, but they had a great influence on me, and wherever they are, they're happy. That kind of thing. That I always get that feeling. So the feeling that I lost my mother at a young age, or my father died later, etc. There's not a bit of sadness now in me, because I always feel that ki, I should retain only the positive memories of their influence on me. That they did the best to form somebody called Viraj Naidu, who is happy with himself for the time being. Success is measured differently, but yes, I'm comfortable with my at the stage I am at. etc. So I think so that was one thing where I felt very low at that time, to the extent that I was in Tata Steel at that time. After my mother expired, I went back. I remember that what to do after that. काम में मन नहीं लग रहा है, etc., etc.
Oh, it's the first during your first job only.
It was the first job. I was
Oh,
just
very
one
interesting.
or 1.5 years into my job, right? And she was very close to me. So I mean, she was the closest friend I would say I ever had. I mean, my wife is my closest friend now, but that was the thing. So when you lose somebody that close, it can really hurt you. And then that was a low period where I realized that no matter how deep you can go, because for me, later on now when I see in my life, that was perhaps the lowest I've ever been. But from that depth also, if I can come up and then make my mother's memories all positive, that now when I think of my mom, a smile comes to my face. And there's nothing sadness about it. So that was one phase which taught me that yes, you can go through a negative phase, but if you come out and see the positives of that, it can help you. So this was on my personal life. On professional life, I remember I set up the Caparo plant for over 2 years period, etc. It became it was quite an achievement. I'm personally quite proud of it. It's the most profitable fastener manufacturing plant in the country.
It's a greenfield project.
It was a greenfield project. I mean, I was the first employee, and from land selection, bank funding, business case, equipment ordering, everything. So it was a dream project for a person of that age. I was what 33 years old at that time, maybe 35 years old at that time, and executing at green scale. In those days, the project cost was 104 crores, which was massive. To the extent that when I switched the land decision, because we were pursuing the land in Gurgaon with Chandigarh office, Haryana state government, etc., and we saw that process drag on a bit, government bureaucracies, etc., and we switched to Rajasthan because it was just 15 kilometers across the border, etc. And so everything was done with the RICO official, the officer, that this land is available to you. We made the decision, but I was told नहीं साइनिंग के लिए आपको कल राजस्थान भवन आना पड़ेगा. तो वी सेड क्यों अभी यहीं कर देते हैं, सब हो गया. नहीं आप आइए, वो हमारे चेयरमैन आएंगे, उनको साइन करना है. ठीक है. एंड नेक्स्ट डे मॉर्निंग आई वेंट टू राजस्थान भवन इन दिल्ली. उनके चेयरमैन थे, बट उनके चेयरमैन के पहले पूरी प्रेस थी, पूरी मीडिया वहां पर घुसी हुई थी. बिकॉज फॉर देम इट वॉज क्वाइट अ बिग स्टोरी that a group like Caparo making 104 crores investment into an unknown industrial area called Chupanki, which was at that time it was not known. We were only the second factory there, I think, and now it is all full. That area has developed massively. So we were very early in that kind of thing. So Caparo की वाली factory पे लगाए थे. But coming to the negative part of it now, after putting up that factory, I was the executive director at that time, and very young, ambitious, and having done a project of that kind, you feel even more elated कि अभी तो कुछ भी कर सकते हैं kind of thing. But then an MD was brought over me by the Caparo management. They said, you've done a good job, but ठीक है, but to run a plant is a different scale. You have been a great project guy, so you will continue, but and you do the business development continue because you have to do all that, and you will get an MD. And I was very impulsive at that time. I think impulsive, I'm still impulsive, but a lot more at that time, at that age point. And I said, no, नहीं ये तो मेरे ऊपर कोई नहीं आएगा क्योंकि ये मैंने बनाया है, दिस इज माय बेबी, या तो मैं चलाऊंगा या कोई और चलाएगा. मैं चलता हूँ. So I resigned without a job in hand, and by the time my notice period ended also with Caparo, I was without job. एंड उस वक्त टेंशन भी हो गया क्योंकि फैमिली थी, बच्चे भी हो, मेरी बेटी भी आ गई थी. सडनली बीइंग आउट ऑफ जॉब, yes, you I was earning well till then, but at the same time I was never comfortable with the feeling of being out of job. So that was another low period which led to a self-doubt situation, that were you too impulsive in taking a call, maybe you would have stayed in that system only and then resigned later when you had something else in say. But I think that's what pushed me for taking up the next plunge also. When the taco job came, I became the CEO for taco. So that happened, but that period of about 15, 20 days gap in between was a low period. Because उस एज में लगता है ही ना कि यार पूरी फैमिली डिपेंड कर रही है, आप अचानक जॉब वॉब छोड़ के आ गए हो और पता नहीं क्या मिलेगा भी कि नहीं, एक्सेट्रा. सो इस टाइप का होता है. सो यस, दीज लो पीरियड्स हिट यू, but you just have to swim through it and then come back here because nothing lasts forever.
Good. So we have been discussing a lot of serious stuffs. So tell me a few things which were you think as you look back, it's funny and you could have done better. Right now you are more experienced. When you look back your younger self. आपको क्या लगता है मैं यार ये तो बहुत ही बेवकूफ़ी वाले बात काम किया, ये मैं क्या अच्छा कर सकता था? और any funny incident you want to share with us?
Earlier in my career, I used to be uh, very quiet, very focused onto the job. Then in between, I came into a phase where my personality changed with inputs, feedbacks from my wife, my colleagues, and others, etc. Because I wanted to jump into that big picture view. While I was beginning to develop that big picture view, I realized I cannot do that by having a very reserved, aloof attitude. I need to become a people person. And then later on life, and that brought out an extrovert side of me, which earlier was different. And later on in my life, when sort of with age, I won't call the word wisdom, but you start becoming more reflective about your past and also your own behavior. That you start watching your behavior, how you are behaving yourself, etc., which at a younger age, perhaps you are in the flow of it.
What your daughter says about you?
Good question. I'd like to ask her myself. I think that yes, she would say that I'm very measured in what I say,
That's typical
bordering
of
on being politically correct mostly. That's right, and so sometimes boring because and that's something that I would like to work on myself right now. But that's what perhaps she might say on this.
Hmm. Yeah, you can. Yeah, so you're talking about the funny thing.
Yeah, the funny incidences. Okay, I've been a serious person early part of the thing, but yes,
So you haven't done any fun.
good question because I've had
Now,
my
see,
fun
see, I
moment.
made made you realize this.
Yeah,
You,
maybe that maybe in hindsight, I would have liked to enjoy my life a lot more than what perhaps I did because uh, without stopping any of the things which I did actually, because there were moments where I could have done a lot more on
what did you want to?
on the social part of it. That yes, meeting at least in the early part of my career, etc., where I did become very
Why do you
serious
think
in
so?
those.
Why do you think that you have missed it?
Because there was a fun part of it, which because I was so focused on my job that perhaps I did not use that much. The only fun part which I did, which I still keep doing, is my love for Hindi film music. And
You sing also.
I used to. I mean, nowadays is not much. But in my college days, for example, I was the Eastern region champion for an event called Antakshari, which nobody will play nowadays actually. But in those days, it was a big thing. That Antakshari, and we used to have real R&D done on Antakshari. Like for me, the songs ending in tha, for example, because there are not many songs starting with tha. So if you can have a collection of songs ending in tha, you might win.
In IIT, this was happening, or everywhere in Tata Steel also you started.
It was in IIT and then continued in other Eastern region circles, etc. When I joined Tata Steel, for example, I became a very active member of the club at that time because we were in the jungle in Normandy, Joda, actually, nothing there, and the officers' club was dead. And the few of us, me, Dinesh, Sudeep, and a few of us, Gurung, uh, we had nothing else to do. I mean, दिन भर या तो प्लांट में बैठ के गंदे में घुस के काम करो, टेक्निकल प्रॉब्लम, शाम को आके और कुछ नहीं होता है तो हैव अ ड्रिंक और समथिंग लाइक दैट. बट देन वी थॉट कि इसके अलावा भी कुछ हो सकता है. देयर इज अ होल कम्युनिटी देयर which is getting bored equally, and we started involving all the bhabis and etc., and we made the club live again. I mean, that was a period when we did lots of things, and there this Antakshari and Hindi film things came in handy. I used to conduct music quiz, for example, with the thing which became quite a hit with the ladies, for example. That yes, they would. There's a the side of things that we don't discuss normally in the club. Let's discuss that also, apart
Hmm.
from iron ore, etc.
Oh, interesting. So what are you up to now here, like in India now, or at this stage? What are you up to, and what are your next plans, and what excites you right now?
I think I mentioned it in one of the innocuous town hall recently that I did not come back to India to join something big. That I came back here to help something small become bigger. And can that be leveraged using my knowledge? Because Caparo greenfield experience, setting up something from scratch. Uh, DSA from 60 crores, raising it to three times the volume, capacities, etc. So those are the experiences which I believe I can bring to small SMEs and startup companies in their journey towards fast growth. And this market is full of fast growth things, opportunities, and especially for startup companies that we are looking for opportunities which nobody has done. So you create products out of nowhere, and it's the ones that whoever is the first one to come up with that idea who gains the big margin and then moves on to the next innovation. So that's what I am up to right now, apart from my long term passion of teaching. That in my colony, for example, I just posted that I'm a 57 years old professional now doing consulting part time, and I would, if there's a kid I would who wants to learn from me, why not? I won't charge money, but it's just to sort of engage. So because that keeps me close to, because working with the kids is something I realized which challenges you.
So wonderful. I think it's wonderful speaking, Viraj. It was a very pleasure. It's enlightening discussion. Hope you also enjoyed.
I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you so much.